All right. And we are live, making it happen. Jeff, so excited to have you on the show today. How are you, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you so much. It's truly an honor and privilege to join you today, and couldn't be more excited to have this opportunity. So thank you so much. I'm a big fan of yours and happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. So I'm very excited having you here. I love entrepreneurs. I love when you guys figure stuff out. Like I love the creative problem solving part of being an entrepreneur. And I happen to believe that being an entrepreneur is one of the most creative endeavors that you can undertake because ultimately you get paid to be creative, to solve these obstacles that keep popping up. And we're going to talk a lot about that. But before we do all that, Jeff, how would people know you? Kind of what's brag for me for a quick minute. What are you known for?
You know, I guess most notably right now, I'm known for Everables, which is a craft superfood chain, 30 restaurants, multiple states, one of America's fastest growing QSRs. We've won some recognition. I've been nominated and won the award for top entrepreneur under the age of 40. And was also I was recruited by Forbes to be an entrepreneur instructor in their online school of business and technology. So you've probably seen me there, as well as on LinkedIn Learning. So that's probably where you may have seen me if you've seen me at all. And I guess that's the best I can do for bragging.
Man, that's huge. That is huge. But my guess is that your journey wasn't exactly linear, right? It probably, like most entrepreneurs, had some ups and downs.
Yes, the yo-yo.
The yo-yo. So let's start at the beginning. Where are you from?
Sure. From San Diego, born and raised. Went to University of Arizona for undergraduate and graduated actually at 21 and had no idea what I was going to do with myself. I actually graduated a year early and was really like, okay, now what? I wanted to be a sports agent. I wanted to do like 19 different things. And I never had that one thing that I just knew I wanted to do. So I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps and applied to law school at the same time, right when I was in February of the year I was graduating, and told the Marines that if I get into law school, I'm not going to the Marines. And if I don't get into law school, I will join the Marine Corps.
Okay. I like that.
And I had an enlistment date of July to go to the Marines, but I got accepted to law school in May. So I ended up not joining the Marine Corps and went to law school to be a sports agent and to pursue that career. And my third year of law school, I ended up getting engaged and had a baby and decided I didn't want to pursue being a sports agent and have to travel around the world representing athletes, but wanted to spend more time with my own family. And so I graduated law school, turned down my job that I had lined up with Lee Steinberg Sports Agency, and had to then figure it out. What was I going to do? So that's kind of that's how it all started, without any indication or clue of what I was going to do or who I was going to be when I grew up.
When you grew up, right?
Yeah. And it's really was just kind of, I was always plagued with what everyone told me was one of my biggest weaknesses, which was they used to say I don't have enough stick-to-itiveness because I would jump from idea to idea, and more like I call it entrepreneurial ADD now. But, everyone's like, back then, entrepreneurship wasn't sexy, and that whole thing wasn't really an industry you went into. It was more, hey, you figure out what you're going to be when you grow up, and you do that for 40 years, and then you retire. And so I had this law degree and I wasn't practicing law, and my family and support group was like, what are you doing? You just took out 6 figures of law school loans to be a lawyer. Okay, you don't want to be a sports agent, go be a lawyer. But I didn't want to be a lawyer. So I got a job at ADP, the payroll company, selling payroll. And that was just to start paying the bills to support my fiance and daughter and pay back some law school loans and figure out what I was going to do. And was there 6 months, had a job for 6 months after law school, was fortunate to be the #1 sales rep in the country and first to make President's Club, and made a boatload of money, and thought, okay, hey, I can do this. This looks pretty good. And I will never forget, it was January 2008. And I went in my boss's office and I said, I earned this Pinnacle Award, or this annual bonus of $17,000. And I went in to get my $17,000. And they explained to me I had to wait till the end of the fiscal year, which wasn't until the end of June. So I wouldn't get paid until July.
Okay.
And one of the things you'll learn about me is I don't have much patience. And so
that's a really long time. Yeah.
And I had an ego, and I was 24 years old, and I needed the money. and I had just bought a house. So me and my fiance had just moved into a brand new house brand new house for us that we had just bought. We'd been in there maybe 2 months. And so I spent all my savings on that, coupled with my loans and the child and the marriage and the whole thing.
Yep.
I needed the money. And my boss explained to me, Jeff, you don't get it till the end of July. You're an outlier. I'm sorry. We don't have a process to pay this early. And in an ego moment, I threatened to quit if they didn't give it to me. And they called my bluff. They said, we're not paying you the money till the end of the year. So if you want to quit, you can quit. And I remember going home that night and saying to my fiance, okay, I can't go back into the office because they called my bluff. So I want to quit. I want to sell this house. I want to move in with my mom and dad temporarily. And I want to start my own payroll company. And she was supportive and she said, okay. And so,
wow.
So literally February, I quit my job, got out of my house, moved in with my mom and dad, and started my own payroll company. And that was how I was thrust into entrepreneurship, having no prior plan to ever be an entrepreneur or thought about being an entrepreneur. I knew nothing about starting a company. I knew very little even about payroll except how to sell it. And I remember that moment. Yeah, it was a scary moment. It was a moment where everyone around me thought I was nuts. My parents were trying to talk me out of it, even though they allowed me to move in, of course. They said, Jeff, I made 6 figures in 6 months. They said, what are you doing? Like, this is a cushy job. Right. Stay where you are, work and make money and pay off your debts and build your family and support your family and do all these things. But it just wasn't for me. It just wasn't what I was meant to do at that time. And so I did. And that was my foray into entrepreneurship. And then from there, just to save you the long-winded backstory, I've started and sold many companies. I've started and failed many companies. And I've developed and realized that I'm a serial entrepreneur, or as my wife will jokingly say, a degenerate entrepreneur. I like to start companies. I like to build them from scratch. As you said, it's all about being a problem solver. Yes. And I love the challenge. I found that more than being on top of the mountain, I love the journey to get to the top of the mountain. Right. And unfortunately, when you are journeying and trying to get up to the top, sometimes you fall and end at the bottom. Mm-hmm. And it's how you learn how to pivot and how you adapt and what you do to overcome those obstacles that are there.
100%. Wait, I want to go back though. I have questions. The idea of fantasizing to be a sports agent, first off, super hard gig to get, right? Seems very sexy, hang out with pro athletes, flying private, making buckets of money, like the whole thing, right? The show me the money, Tom Cruise action. So you work super hard to get there. You get one of those gigs. Just so everybody knows, there's not a lot of those gigs. That's a really hard job to get. So credit to him to even get that job. And then you're like, nah, fam, I'm good. I'm out. Like, hold on. That had to affect you. It had to.
Yes. I mean, it was. I love Jerry Maguire. I always wanted to be a professional sports athlete. I wasn't good enough to do that. So my way to stay connected to the sports world and continue to pursue that dream, at least in some manner, was to be a sports agent. Mm-hmm. And through my mentor, Dave Meltzer, who was the CEO of Lee Steinberg Sports Agency and a family friend, I did earn that opportunity over years of hard work to get it. And it was hard. I mean, truthfully, I didn't want to not pursue it. I just didn't want to make the sacrifices necessary to pursue it. And so it was I look at it as the better of two goods. I get to be a sports agent, or I get to see my family. Both are great options. Yes. My family won. And, I don't spend a lot of time with regret of any kind. I mean, obviously, yes, in a different world, I would have met my family a couple of years later and I would have already been a sports agent. Right. And it would have been a different circumstance and a different scenario. But that's just not how the world presented itself to me and my journey. Yeah. Yes. So it did impact me. But what it did also give me was a sense of, accomplishment, because like you said, I got close to the top of that mountain of that goal. I never got to see what it felt like at the top. I went just to the brim and then turned around, but that's okay, because what I've learned about myself is I actually, like I said, I enjoy the climb. And so the journey was fun. Law school was tough and not fun, but I learned a ton, met incredible people, built my resume, and why not throw on 6 figures of debt just to see what it feels like.
It's a little pressure. Yeah. So I love that that you threatened to quit. I've got a similar story. It's a crazy story, but I'll make mine super short because I want this to be about you. But what happened to you happens in a lot of different businesses. So at the time, I was working for Columbia Management. At that time, Columbia Management was owned by Bank of America. It was Bank of America's asset management arm. You have to remember they were a $1 trillion with a T, $1 trillion asset manager. So massive. And my job was to go sell mutual funds to financial advisors, analysts, etc. What you would call wholesale. Okay, so long story short, I build a relationship, which is what I'm paid to do. That opportunity presented itself with the largest trade of my potential career at the time. Just to give you an idea, my annual sales goal was 260 million is what I was supposed to bring in net new sales, and this one trade was 380 million. Right.
Wow.
So you're talking, I was going to have a year. I was on track to blow my goal out of the water anyway. And then that was gravy on top. So we're talking about them writing me a comp check that they didn't have in their model. Like that just was way out of their comfort zone. So, okay. So this all happens and, I get the trade and I'll just tell you what I'm supposed to get paid. I'm supposed to be paid just shy of $1 million. It was like $940,000 comp check. It's amazing. And I'm 28 at the time, 29. And it was a big rigmarole. Like it made some people in the firm really happy and braggadocious because they were sort of on Team Pierre. And there were other people at the firm that didn't make them feel so good and made them look bad at their jobs. Like that happens in big companies, right? There's bureaucracies and other things. Long story short, they come back to me and they go, hey, we can't afford to pay you this up front, like in one check. We actually have to break it down quarterly. You've blown our comp budget way out. We actually have to go find your comp. Like you're not supposed to make this much money, right? We figure, okay, for those of you who don't know and haven't worked in commission sales jobs, they figure that a third of you are going to beat goal by a certain percentage, a third of you are going to hit goal, and a third of you are going to be under goal. And so they have a on-target earnings, an OTE of, let's say it's 150 grand. But my problem was I was so much more than goal, and there was no cap on the upside, that I was going to get paid 4x what everybody else was supposed to get paid, and that just threw everything off. So they tried to break it down quarterly for me. And it turned into this big, big fight. And I only bring up that story to say that ADP is a huge company. Bank of America is a monstrous company, right? And yet they had those problems and you called them out on it and put yourself in a at the time, a very uncomfortable situation. But as we all know, necessity is the mother of invention. So you started this payroll company, and I want to dig into that for a quick second. Did you get that thing off the ground? Did you go get some sales? Did you have some customers? Did you make any revenue? Like how did that go?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, really I never thought, I'll just take one step back to answer that. I never imagined a world where they would so to give you perspective, my contract at ADP, which I started, I think I went on quota in August of 2007, was to sell $110,000 in annualized payroll. That's the way we did it. And by January, I was north of 375,000. So I was throwing it out.
6 months. Yeah, you're crushing.
Yeah, my annual goal, and I still had 6 months to go. I didn't think there was a world or scenario where they would let me leave over $17,000, even if they had to figure out how to get me that money. So I was shocked when they came back and just told me and my manager was honest. She's like, Jeff, you're an outlier. We just don't have a process for that. And because it's a big company, we can't just say yes. Like, yes, my manager's like, I'd give it to you in a second. Right. But I don't have the authority, and it goes up the stream, and they're just not going to spend the energy and effort to focus on solving your need when you're getting the money in 6 months. Now just go back to work. Right. So that just took all the wind out of my sails, and I was no longer mentally on the team, and therefore I had to leave. But yes, so I started my own payroll company with a friend of mine out of my mom's kitchen called iChecks. Really, obviously, I just sold a ton of payroll. Right? So yeah, I knew how to sell it, and I went back and I sold a ton for iChecks, and yeah, we grew it really quickly. Of course, my timing was sensational because there was the economic crash of 2008, which perfectly timed with me starting my own company.
Wonderful.
The only benefit was I got out of the house before the complete destruction of the housing market.
Yes.
So that was happening probably either way. But yeah, no, we grew it. We ended up raising private equity capital at the end of 2008.
Wow.
Changed the name to Canopy HR and sold the company in 2011. So it was a success. It was one of those nice success stories. Made some good money doing it. Learned a lot of what not to do. Got to sharpen my sword, so to speak, while doing that, and overcome the economic recession. I mean, it was tough because businesses were going out of, companies were going out of business all over the place. People were not making many changes, let alone betting on some startup no-name payroll company, or a 24-year-old kid who, didn't have the polish of ADP. I mean, one of my sales lines at ADP, for anyone who was like, yeah, Jeff, it sounds good, but why would I leave my payroll company to go to ADP? My exact response would be, you're not going to get fired for choosing ADP. If we make a mistake, we're the best in the business.
Right.
Your small payroll company could make mistakes all day and you might lose your job. So you don't get fired for choosing the Coca-Cola of the industry. Therefore, that's why you go with ADP. Yeah. I had to undo that sale. And so, but no, it was good. It was good. And I learned a lot. And that was the best thing, because I think if we're not learning, we're not improving. If we're not failing, we're not learning. So, I learned a lot of things to do. I learned a lot of things not to do. I learned how to be an executive. I learned how to do startups. I learned so much. So I'm so fortunate, but my timing was terrible with the economic recession. My fiance was very upset that it took 17 months to get out of my mom's house, when I told her it would be only 6 months, because I thought I was just going to go sell $1 million in 6 months.
Right.
And, those are those pivotal moments, but I wouldn't trade any of them because, like you said, circumstances and they drive necessity, and they drive the desire, the demand for progress, and it's all about progress, not perfection. And that's what I strive for.
Okay. So there's a lot to pick apart there. And what I'm about to say is going to be super obvious to you, but not as obvious to everybody else. Big businesses fail all the time. The leaders in their class will fall because they get too big. Amazon will fall at some time. It will happen. I know everyone thinks I'm crazy, right? Facebook will be no longer at some point. And how that happens is this level of bureaucracy, this middle management muddling that happens, that stifles growth. They couldn't pay you $17,000. That clearly was the cheapest $17,000 that they could ever spend to keep their number one salesperson, who was 3x over goal with 6 more months to go before the end of the year. Like, you were on track to be 6 times your sales goal, right? Mm-hmm. You pay anything to keep that person, right? You fire the bottom 3 people to pay that guy. That's what a smart business person would do. That's what you would do. But ADP is so fat and so happy from being the biggest game in town that they just go, our protocol is to pay you in 7 months. And heaven forbid we actually empower our managers to make a decision to cut a teensy weensy $17,000 check.
Well, and the kicker is, because I quit, they had to pay me the $17,000 now.
Isn't that great?
So I got my money. They paid it either way. One way they would have kept me, and I would have still. For all we know, I'd still be there, and I would be running the company.
Right. So people think, I talk about this all the time because there are companies that are out there that are very, very large that are starting to make those types of mistakes. And I'll be the first person to shout, hey, the emperor's not wearing any clothes. They're not going to be around too much longer. And it's based on that behavior. And people will go, you're crazy. That company's worth $1 trillion. They have a market cap of 150 billion, whatever the number is. Great. Ask your grandparents about a company called American Steel. Most Americans have never even heard of a company called American Steel. Our grandparents used to think that American Steel was, by the way, it's a company, not just a thing. So most people don't even know that. American Steel was once the largest company in the world, right? They're absolutely massive. Okay, so let's bring it a little bit closer. Polaroid. Polaroid dominated the photography market share, right? When it came to film, cameras, anything having to do with that world, they own something like 87% of the market. Polaroid is all but out of business at this point because they failed to innovate. Best Buy, Circuit City, all gobbled up by Amazon. Blockbuster was by far the largest media distribution company in the United States. Their senior management had an opportunity to buy Netflix at an incredibly low valuation. They said no. The board of super smart people that are all overpaid did a poll to see why customers liked using Blockbuster. And quote, this is real, because our customers like bumping into their neighbors at the store, and they like reading the back cover of the DVD. That's why they come to Blockbuster. They will never use Netflix because that's what they can do. There's a sense of community here, right? Blockbuster has one location left, one, and it's in Alaska.
Alaska.
Oh, that's it. So my point in telling you these stories is, those are signs. What you experienced with ADP, what I experienced with Bank of America, those are signs of how big companies can not beat an itty bitty undercapitalized startup with 5 employees, right? Like that's how it happens. I'll give you one more example and then I want to dig into your story, but I think this is so important. So a couple years back, there was this guy named Drew, and he had this idea of having a service where you could upload your files to basically a website. And now anybody on your company or anybody outside of your company could pull those files, big files, video, pictures, etc. And he named his company Dropbox. He had a couple of employees and no money. It was in New York. There's another company called Google. They had all of the money, all of the engineers. They actually had an enterprise software group building something called G Drive. How many people have heard of G Drive? Nobody. How many people have heard of Dropbox? Everybody. It's now a publicly traded company. Google had all the resources, all the intelligence, all the money, all the everything, and was working on the problem. It's not even like they didn't see it coming, unlike a Blockbuster. They were working on it and they failed, and Dropbox was wildly successful. Why? That's a big part of it, right? So for all you want, people who want to be an entrepreneur and or whether you want to invest in them or be in them, understand that this is some of the things that you need to look at when you're looking at any of those markets. Okay.
Can I touch on that though,
yeah,
really
please.
quick? Because I think that there's a valuable lesson here that I use that if I can share with the audience and it'll help them. Being a startup or a small company, you have 2 strengths over big companies, and it's called speed and agility. And the analogy that I share with my team all the time, that when you go up against the Titanic, that Titanic got sunk by an iceberg. You and me in a Zodiac would not have sunk by that iceberg because we have the ability to move our ship on a dime anytime.
Right.
If you don't use those 2 strengths, you will lose.
100%.
The Titanic is bigger. It'll run you over if you get in its way, but you don't have to be in its way. You can get into new ideas and innovate in areas. And if it fail fast and get the hell out before you cause too much damage, that's the power. And when you find a good track and a good lane, you have the first to market opportunity. You have the ability to stay disruptive and innovate. So by the time Blockbuster tried to copy Netflix, which they did, Netflix was too far ahead. Yes. I don't need Blockbuster. I have Netflix. Exactly. Same thing with all of those companies you just articulated on. So I just wanted to touch on that because I think that the huge advantage of being small and nimble is your speed and agility.
100%. 100%. But I want to get back into your story a little bit. So after you exit, just from how I know you, I'm guessing it was 24 hours after you exited that you were like, okay, what's next? What are we doing? What are we working on? You don't seem a Mai Tai on the beach for too long type of guy. Right. So
true.
So what happens next?
Well, so simultaneously, while I was running iChecks, I always like to ask my customers, what problems they're dealing with. Because I believe as an entrepreneur, I solve problems. And the number one problem my clients were facing, my payroll clients were facing, was we were in the middle of a recession and they couldn't recruit talent because the unemployment pool was too big. And people who had jobs that were qualified weren't leaving jobs because they were scared. So my company got paid based on how many payroll checks we cut. So the more
Mm-hmm.
employees you have, the more money I make. If you have a problem finding talent, I want to solve it. So I started a company on the side called JFen Recruiting, where it was a recruiting agency, and we helped iChecks and Canopy clients get more employees. And so it was a recruiting agency. So when I sold Canopy, iChecks became Canopy HR. We sold it. When we sold Canopy HR, I still had the recruiting agency for about 7 months. So I grew that for a little while and then sold that. And then my youngest was born in 2011 in November. And I really didn't want to travel nearly as much as I had been. So I made the decision. I felt like, you know what, it's 2012. The computer probably isn't going anywhere. More and more businesses are starting to use it. So I might as well start a digital marketing agency. And I didn't know anything about computers, barely even knew how to use one really. And I decided that I wanted to be able to work from home or a single office locally, not have to travel, and utilize and kind of take the Wayne Gretzky concept of skating to where the puck was going to be, and knowing that this was a growing field. So I started a digital marketing agency about 3 months after I got out of my recruiting agency.
I love that you're like, well, I don't know how to do this, so I should probably go ahead and start it. I love that because I talk to people all the time, right? So part of what I do, I'm an investor and an entrepreneur. That's what I do. And from time to time, I get asked to go speak at various conferences, mostly to large conferences around tech and what have you, around marketing and business and what have you. And, because of COVID, that has all gone to zero, right? But I tell people all the time, the biggest problem in their business is that they don't take enough risk. And the reason they don't take enough risk is because they don't think that they know how to do something. And as if that's a bad thing. That's actually
Right.
like the most powerful weapon you have, because now you don't have preconceived notions on how it's supposed to go.
That's right. You just hit it.
Uber and Airbnb are built, they're predicated on the fact that those founders had no freaking idea about taxis or hotels. And
Everable, my restaurant chain is built. I didn't know anything about restaurants. I don't know how to cook.
There's so much value in having what I call the child's mind, right? Because you're not afraid to ask dumb questions. They're all dumb questions to you. People need to get over that fear of not knowing how to do it. Jump into the deep end of the pool. It's scary as heck. I get it. It's scary. Yes, acknowledge that it's scary. Jump in anyway, and you will learn so much. Okay, so sorry.
I know, and I'll give you my personal quote on that is, experience is the most overrated prerequisite to starting a company. And anyone who waits for experience is wasting time and energy.
Okay, so I couldn't agree more. Like, I'm about to scream preach here. I happen to have a personal belief that hiring is so broken here in the United States. And one of the reasons why hiring is broken, and this is ties sort of perfectly to your company before you sold it, which is people hire based on experience. They go, hey, I need a sales guy, right? He worked at Oracle selling servers for the last 5 years. I need a guy to go sell servers over at Amazon Web Services. Okay. That's the guy I'm going to hire. I'm not going to hire Jeff. I'm not going to hire Pierre because those guys don't have any experience selling servers. I'm going to go hire the guy at Oracle. Okay. Let me ask you this. If he was any good at selling servers, would he have been selling servers for 5 years? Probably not. He probably would have been selling servers for a couple of years and then gotten promoted to a role that he didn't know how to do.
Or he'd be making so much money, there'd be a 0% chance you could afford him.
Exactly. Which means you are most likely at best hiring their average person or below average person who's not worthy of being promoted up to management so that he or she can then go train other salespeople.
And you can learn this from so many great examples. I mean, Cool Runnings, the movie, the Jamaican track team that became bobsledders. They didn't know how to bobsled, but they knew the foundational principles necessary was speed. So they got people who could run really fast and put them in a bobsled.
Yeah.
And they were they made the Olympics.
Yes.
And they didn't have bobsledding experience. They didn't have ice on the island.
Right. That's so I just happen to believe that, experience is so overrated. Curiosity and work ethic, grit, personality traits, aptitude is what matters. Experience matters actually very, very little. In some ways, it's actually a hindrance.
in the restaurant space, when I told my family I was going to start a restaurant called Everable, and my dad was like, 9 out of 10 restaurants fail.
Yep.
I'm like, well, yeah, but that's because 100 out of 100 restaurants are started by people who've been in the restaurant business. So therefore, yes, they're all that restaurant experience. 90% of the time, they're going to fail because they're restaurateurs trying to run business. Businesses are businesses. The foundational principles are the same, regardless of whether or not you're a digital marketing agency, a payroll company, recruiting agency, restaurant, construction. Doesn't matter, right? Core business is business. If you know how to do it, the what can be figured out.
I couldn't agree more. So wait, we got to go. We skipped too far. Digital marketing agency. So you start that. How do you go get customers? What the heck are you even selling them? Give me that story.
So I have a friend. His name's Pat. He's got a website, smartpassiveincome.com. His name's Pat Flynn. He's pretty renowned now, but back in 2012, he was earlier on in his career. And I reached out to him. We grew up together. And I said, Pat, I want to pay you $10,000 a month to teach me digital marketing. And he's like, Jeff, it sounds great, but the name of my business is Smart Passive Income, and teaching you is not very passive. I can't do it. But you should meet a guy named Neil Patel. And I said, who's that? And he said, well, he's pretty much the #1 rock star in this industry. And if you're going to join the industry, you probably A, need to know who he is, but B, you should probably talk to him. Maybe he'll help. So I said, great. Can you make an intro? And so Pat made an introduction to Neil, and I was going to have this phone call with Neil. And at that moment I said, okay, I don't want to work for Neil, and I don't want to learn from Neil. I want to partner with Neil. If he's that good, we can use a bug light concept, my sales ability with his prowess and knowledge and industry stature. I can sell a ton of this. Yep. So I went out and I sold a 6-figure digital marketing customer before my call with Neil. And then when I had my call with Neil and he answered the phone and he's like, nice to meet you. And I'm like, great, nice to meet you, Neil. And I just went for this angle and I said, hey, just FYI, I sold our first client. It's a 6-figure contract. So I have a check for 6 figures for you. I know we haven't met yet in person, and we're going to jump into why we're talking, but just know at the end of the call, I need your address so I can send you a check for 6 figures for our first client. And then I went into telling him about who I am. And it was very different from anything else he probably had been experienced. And so
that's
naturally,
the best
he was curious.
Angle ever. Yeah. That's amazing.
And we ended up partnering together for 4 years, had some great clients. He's one of my best friends. He's an incredible guy. So I leveraged his knowledge and industry stature and my sales ability, and built a business around him and utilizing that bug light concept. And then we built out a team, and I did a lot of the heavy lifting, and he got to just be the celebrity. But that's what I needed and wanted.
That's what you needed. And, he was your ADP, happy. By the way. Right. He was your ADP. That's what that was. It was borrowed reputational capital that you could then turn around and commoditize and sell.
I went from yesterday not knowing even how to turn on a computer properly to tomorrow. Now I'm the number 1 digital marketer in the world because of Neil Patel. So yes. I didn't know how to do it. And for those wondering, well, Jeff, it doesn't make sense. You have no experience. How do you do it? I just showed you. That's how I did it. I didn't do it. Neil did it. He knows the industry. He's forgotten more than I'll ever learn. But I don't need to, right? A team, right? If you think about a baseball or a football team, the quarterback doesn't kick the ball. The kicker kicks the ball. So regardless, you don't have a quarterback. If I have a kicker, I just need a quarterback, right? So I played general manager. I played that, and I built a team around me of people who are amazing at what they do and solve and fill my weaknesses and my gaps. And I do the areas of my strength, and together we conquer new industries. And so we built a digital marketing company, had great clients, had a lot of fun, made a lot of money, helped a lot of people. It was awesome. And in 2015, as I mentioned, I have entrepreneurial ADD. I had started a few other websites and other companies on the side. Some were successful, some weren't, but then sold off all of our clients. Took about 6 months of driving my wife and kids crazy. And then my wife said, go do something because you're driving us crazy. And so, because I can't just sit in the house doing nothing. And so I started Everables with the idea of helping everybody be their best self through nutrition, and really wanted to solve the #1 reason why we're killing ourselves in America. You learn that heart disease, obesity, strokes, cancer, over 80% of them are caused by lifestyle choices, not genetics. Yep. And so when you learn that and you realize how prevalent those 4 conditions are in and around society, I wanted to be part of that. And my passion outside of my family and startups is health and wellness. And so I wanted to understand, why are we eating so badly? Why are we not exercising? If we know the answer, why are we still doing it?
Right.
And I came up with the 4 excuses as to why people eat unhealthy. It either costs too much to eat healthy, or we think it does. It doesn't taste good. it doesn't fill you up and leave you satisfied, or you just can't get it. Accessibility. And so I built Everable to solve those 4 excuses and make affordable, filling, delicious, and accessible food that's good for you. And that was my whole premonition behind Everable when I launched it.
Where was your first location?
Poway, California.
Poway, California.
So,
so for non-LA guys and gals,
San
where is
Diego.
Poway? Right.
San
So it's
Diego.
further
It's a
south.
suburb of San Diego. And the way it happened was I wasn't really ready. I didn't have a name. I didn't have a menu. I went into a Smoothie King in Poway when I was visiting an old client of mine just to say hi in July 22nd of 2016. And the owner of the building was in there literally moving things to his car, but he made me a smoothie and we got to talking. And I think it was a Tuesday or Wednesday, maybe Thursday. I don't remember what day of the week it was. And he said at the end of the week, he was retiring and shutting it down for good. So they were gone. He tried to sell it, but it was a Smoothie King franchise. He was asking too much money. It was the last remaining Smoothie King in San Diego County, and no one wanted it. So I said, well, can I have the landlord's number? And he gave me the landlord's number. I called her, and on August 2nd, I signed a lease under my personal name because I didn't have a name for the concept. But I figured if a Smoothie King could survive for 20 years here, and I was going to bring healthy food here, there was already a built-in market. I didn't have to figure that out in location. And I don't know anything about restaurants. This guy's done this for 20 years successfully. Okay, I'm going to leverage him. So I signed a lease, and then without a name, without a menu, without truly my concept dialed in, and then opened October 16th of 2016 with a name and a menu and figured it out.
Being the culinary titan that you were before opening your first restaurant, that is critical in all that deep experience.
I will tell you, the way I did the menu was fun. So we opened October 15th. September 20th, I invited a bunch of friends over to my house, and I made a bunch of food. And I gave them all these little note cards, and I said, okay, grade each of these. And I got them to all grade them. And then I had about 20 people, which I thought was statistically significant, even though it's not. But because they're all friends of mine, so they already have something wrong with them.
And by a subset.
Right. And that's how we built the menu. And I figured, you know what, if the menu didn't work, I could change it. But focused on building a great team. Branding was big for us. Scaling was big for us. I didn't want to open one. I wanted to open and build a system to open 100 of them. And so that's really what shot off to do, all while helping everybody unevolve, which is a word I created and trademarked, to move and eat the way you were meant to, live actively and eat stuff that's been around forever. And Everable's tagline is made from stuff that's been around forever. So we really wanted to solve the eating crisis in America and be that solution so people could be their best self.
Yep. So I absolutely love that. And people will hear me talk about how food shouldn't be so cheap. So one of the problems, I think, is that when you look at what percentage of a household income in 1950, let's say here in the United States, people spent about 27% of their household income on food. You fast forward to today, it's less than 10% of household income is spent on food. The cost of food continues to decline. Well, the only way that happens is through technology, effectively, right? And commerce. So what do I mean by commerce? McDonald's loses money on every cheeseburger it sells. It's a loss leader. They lose money on the fries because they charge you $3.75 for a Coke that costs them 2 cents.
Right.
They're there to sell soda. McDonald's does not sell burgers. They do not sell French fries. They're a real estate holding company that sells sugar water. That's what McDonald's actually is, people. So,
and fun fact about McDonald's, they're also the largest toy manufacturer in the world from the Happy Meal.
That's it. So that's not who you want to get your food from. Just a memo to everyone. Like, you want to eat food that has real names, right? Like lettuce and tomato, right? Those are real names. Monosodium glutamate.
Made from stuff that's been around forever. Right. Real food. Whether you're a vegetarian, a paleo, you eat meat, you eat fish, you don't, it doesn't matter. Right. Your body knows how to process all of that. But when you introduce laboratory created, chemical filled food that human beings manufactured, it's foreign and your body does not know how to process it. And the best analogy I can give you is you put gasoline in your car. But if I took a spoon of yellow 5 into your gas tank, you'd beat me up or call the police.
Right.
And you only own the car for 5 years, if you're lucky.
Right. This is your body forever. Yeah, it's so obvious. Okay, so let me know how that opening went. How did the grand opening go? How did it,
Well,
crickets? Did you have somebody come? What does that look like for you?
so I didn't know what to do. So I just used regular business acumen and normal human thought and said, okay, I have 7 employees. I'm going to let them invite all their friends. And I didn't know how to train them. So I said, invite all your friends and family over and we'll give them free food and you'll make it for them. And that's how we'll train you. And we'll get people to try our food. So they did that and we had a great showing and it was all free. And then the very next day we opened for real. And I opened the doors and for the first 3 hours, not a single soul walked in.
Wow.
Finally, a gentleman walks in and he said, he's looking at the menu and it's me and Ben, my first employee. And he looks at us and he goes, I don't know what any of this is. Can you make me eggs and bacon? And we didn't sell eggs and bacon. So I said, no, unfortunately I can't. But I was like, let me make you some free food. If you don't like it, it's on me. Don't worry about it. Just try it. So I did. And I just started making friends. And our 2 rules at Everable and my 2 business principles are make friends and have fun. And that's what every employee, we have close to 400 employees. They all know those 2 rules. That's what we stand behind, making friends and having fun, because eating is a humanistic experience. Food and music are things we do in society from birth to death and every life event in between. And when you just make friends with somebody, they'll try it. And if you like it, you'll come back. And if you don't, you'll give me feedback and we'll adapt. Right. But that was what we predicated it on. And over time, gradually I was in the store, but we built it 1 customer, 1 friend at a time. And fast forward 3 years, we opened 28 locations in 3 years and won some awards and have been growing really quickly. And we're now franchising, where we have franchise interests from all over the world. And we've already done 20 unit deal with a group out of Utah, and we're talking to franchisees right now in 13 other states. And it all stems from making friends and having fun and not overthinking and overcomplicating the process, right? Just make friends with people. They'll try it. If they like it, they'll come back.
That's right. So you must have, in order to scale that quickly, you must have gone to investors and built out that, because that's a massive amount of scale, even if your business is killing it, to grow like that. Care to share any of how that went for people? Just 50,000 foot view and how you went about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I self-funded the first few. I never was going to bring on investors, but I realized the first restaurant cost me over 200,000 to build. And that's not scalable. That's risky for restaurants. And it's 200,000 is cheap for a restaurant, by the way.
Yep.
But it was too expensive for me. So the common theme, I'm a serial entrepreneur and I like to start startups. I figured, why are we doing this so different? Why don't we think about this differently? How can IKEA ship me an entire bedroom furniture in a box? And it cost me 200 grand to build another Everable. So started my own construction company called We Build stuff. And we build Everables, and we've recreated basically a restaurant on a pallet, if you will, where we fabricate and do everything off site and can install restaurants in under 2 weeks. And our average build out cost now is $50,000. And so what that's allowed us to do is not only franchise for the cheapest thing in the world and go back to what franchising was meant to do, but it attracted the right kind of investors who really wanted to invest in a process, in a system. Right. Investing in restaurants is risky. And I'm not a restaurant. I tell everyone, we're not in the restaurant business. We're in the entertainment business. We entertain people and we give them nutrition, and we're in the build out of restaurant business. And we're in the import business because we import superfoods. And so, yes, we've raised about $6 million over the last 3 years. Saruya Private Equity is one of our largest investors, and they are awesome. They have found us, and they own 18,000 different units across 59 countries, spreading across brands like Pinkberry and Hot Dog on a Stick and Round Table Pizza and all these incredible brands. They joined us because they believed in our process and in our system, which really is disruptive, because now I can pass those savings to my customer and I can pass those savings to my franchisees. So where my competitors sell a franchise for, let's say, 250 to 300,000 all in, we're selling franchises for 75 to 100,000 all in, meaning your store is built, you're trained, you have product, you're open for business, and you've only outlaid $75 to $100,000, versus just the build out cost alone for my competitors is more than that. So you de-risk your investment.
Yep.
Correct.
Easily.
And we went back to what franchising was meant to be, which was a vehicle for everybody to build sustainable wealth over time, and not just a vehicle for the rich to make more money, which is what franchising unfortunately has become now. Because like a McDonald's, to open one, you have to have $1.5 million liquidity, net worth.
Yes.
When they started, they wanted, the 20, 30, 40 something year old who doesn't have much net worth, but wanted to be their own boss and build sustainable wealth. That's where McDonald's franchising started. That's not where it is today.
Yeah. And when you hear about franchising today, the first two names I think of are Peyton Manning, who owns like 75 Papa John's, or maybe it's 125 Papa John's. It's a lot of locations. Rick Ross, who owns, I don't know how many wing stops. I feel like he owns half the company. Right. And you go, okay, well, those are super, super, super wealthy people who just made themselves wealthier. Right. And so how does that help me, the little guy? Right. I'm not Rick Ross. I'm not Peyton Manning. So that can never be me when actually it can be you. But I want to key onto something that you said. Process, standard operating procedure. Your SOPs are what make a restaurant live or die. It's not the quality of your food. It's not. Your SOP will adjust, will fix bad quality food specifically. Your value is in your SOP. If you don't believe me, let's look at the most ubiquitous, easiest food in the whole wide world to make, called a burrito. Now, it is rice, it is beans, it's a flour tortilla or corn tortilla. It's a very simple ingredients. It's ubiquitous. You can get it absolutely everywhere, especially where you are. But really around the world, it is everywhere. Yet there's a little company called Chipotle, who somehow manages to have $170 billion market cap the last time I took a look, selling a burrito. Well, okay, how do they do that? Is there secret sauce in their burrito? No, they have a fantastic model. They have a super tight standard operating procedure where every step of that process, from how they source it, logistics, how it's made, customer interactions, all of it is down to a science and repeatable. And it's that repeatable that allows you to scale. And that's why they are who they are, right? And it's your SOPs that have created value in Everbowl, and that has given you the opportunity to scale at such an incredible rate. But one thing we didn't talk about earlier was doubt. Like, you had multiple times in your life where things were pretty scary and didn't go, like ADP calling your bluff, right? Like, that's scary.
Yeah. Starting a business during a recession. I was a victim of identity theft when I was about to sell my payroll company. That stuff happens. I had a contract in my digital marketing company. One of the reasons we ended up getting tired of the industry was time, but also we had done a deal with a company, and I'm not going to say who it is just because of NDAs and the issues that were there, but they owed us $1.5 million, and they decided to tell us, we're not paying you. And they were much bigger than we were, and had very big company with 9 and 10 figure size revenues, very big. And basically they insinuated that they'll just drown us out in legal bills and we're not getting our money. You have those things pop up, right? But those are not those should never drown you. The doubt shouldn't be there, because the process, going back to exactly what you just said, the process of success, I believe, it's formulaic, and success is what you make it. But if you have a good process and you enjoy the journey, then those obstacles are just part of that. And you pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, and you get back in the fight, and you do it again the next day, knowing that you will overcome it. And I'll give you this. You can't name one blockbuster movie that you've loved that doesn't have a low point in the hero story.
Of course.
Without it, it's no story. And it's not reality, right? There's a reason we all love that, because we all in our own way can associate with it. We've all experienced our own low points and then the overcoming of it. And so I don't spend, like, I tell myself, I give myself 5 minutes. I give myself a 5-minute pity party after COVID-19, we temporarily shut down 28 restaurants on March 19th. I laid off 400 people. That sucked. It was not good. The retail industry does not look promising on March 19th. It doesn't know if we're ever going to reopen. They're saying a year, and now all this hard work gone. No one wants to come to restaurants. What are we going to do? People aren't going to have money. We're walking into a recession. Yeah. Okay. 5 minutes, pity party, and then pivot, then change. So we launched Later Bowls, which is direct to consumer online. You can buy it anywhere in the country and we'll ship it to you overnight, a package of our bowls that you can put in the freezer and make on demand. We would never have done that but for COVID-19. It's been going great. We just did a deal with QVC. We're going to be live on QVC in 2 weeks.
That's fantastic.
2 or 3 weeks, excuse me. We're just finalizing the date, but it's done. And we're going to launch and people will have access to it. And now, post COVID-19, we reopened 17 stores last week, Friday. We're opening 2 more this week, so we'll have 19 open by Sunday of this week. And the Later Bowls isn't going anywhere. It's a new revenue source. So what was a matter of survival is now turned into a whole new revenue stream and a whole new opportunity for us, because we didn't spend so much time being a victim. We spent our time pioneering and pushing forward and finding a new way.
Yep. That is ultimately the critical lesson here. A lot about what we talk about on this podcast is how we get through the dip. And part of that journey that we talk about is coaxing out what I call these truthisms. And if you've listened to the show before, you've heard me say that word 1,000 times, which is we've had amazing guests on the show, such as yourself, authors, former Navy SEALs, rappers, entertainers. I mean, all these amazing different backgrounds. But throughout all of their journeys, they have very similar truthisms, these things that no matter where they came from and where they went, they always maintain true. And that one is exactly the most valuable, which is don't be a victim. Only you decide whether you're a victim or not. Only you decide if you're going to throw yourself a pity party for the next 15 years or 15 minutes and get back to work. Get back to whatever it might be that whatever your journey might be. Now that sounds super easy to say, and it is easy to say, and it is way harder to do. I fully acknowledge that. Absolutely acknowledge that. I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm not saying that COVID doesn't suck. I get it. It's affected a ton of people. I fully appreciate that. However, does that check pay the rent?
Correct.
It doesn't. Okay, so it doesn't. So it sucks. Great. Move on. You have to have that mentality. You have to just go, yep, it sucks, and move on. Without that ability to accept, surrender, compartmentalize, and move forward, you're never going to be able to be where you want to be.
And that's why I give myself a 5-minute pity party, because if you don't give yourself the few minutes to accept it and feel the pain or the upsetness or the pity or whatever you want to go through, you're not giving it its attention necessary. But once you've done that, you check it off the list. So if we were at a dinner party on a boat in the bay and I threw you in your beautiful clothes in the middle of the water, okay, you're going to come up for air. You're going to assess your surroundings. You're going to go, this sucks. And then you're going to swim. You're not going to be like, well, they threw me in the water. That's it.
I guess that's it. Right.
Right. So it's not what you want to be doing. No, I didn't want COVID-19 to happen. I didn't want to shut down restaurants. I didn't want to have to figure out Later Bowls. I didn't want to do that. We were flying high.
Yep.
But we got thrown in the water in our dinner clothes. Assess the situation and swim.
That's all you got. So
no, all you got.
I'm totally with you, man. So this has been an awesome story. Believe it or not, we're coming up on an hour now. Where can people learn more about you, follow you? Tell our audience where to go.
Sure. Everable.com to learn more about Everable. If you're interested in a franchise or Later Bowls, there's a button on the top for franchise or Later Bowls. Also, you can reach me at Fenster Jeff, my last name, first name, on social media, or email me. Connect at jefffenster.com. I love talking to people about business and startups and ideas. I love criticism, feedback, suggestions, compliments. I like it all. So, you can tell me how bad I am or good I am, either way. But would love to chat and connect with as many people as I can.
I love it. All those, by the way, will be in the show notes. So if you don't remember off the top of your head, they'll be in there. So you can just click on that and find everything that Jeff is up to. I got to say thank you very much. This has been cathartic, exciting, fun. I love that you guys have made such a successful pivot during COVID-19. Those are the success stories and positive stories that all of us, myself included, need to hear. Many blessings, man, but you deserve it. It's all that hard work. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Big fan of your show, man. Really appreciate the opportunity to come on, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Till next time, everybody. Thank you.